Left to our own devices, we're going to watch social media and be like, okay, I guess I need to try and strive for that kind of car, and or I should vacation in this kind of place, or we know how this goes. And we dupe ourselves into also believing that that's like, I worked corporately for, like I said, those 17 years. And for me, it was like trappings of success were just delicious, and then too overfilling, and then grotesque. And it was like, I don't know what to do. When am I going to be happy? It's like my business card is defining me right now. And so, well, here's one remedy, it is to stop and recognize, oh, honey, yeah, you're totally going to die. And let's get back in touch with that, because does that help change some of your goals? Does it help change the way in which you want to approach life? How can I be more intentional about my time?
That's author Jodi Wellman. I'm Leah Smart, and this is Everyday Better. Don't forget to hit that follow button to get new episodes of our show every week. And make sure to follow me on LinkedIn, where I dive deeper into evidence-backed strategies for personal development. If you're already following me on LinkedIn, check me out on Instagram for a behind-the-scenes look at how we make every day better. You can find me at Leah_smart. That's Leah_smart. We'll also include a link in the show notes. Hey everyone, from LinkedIn News, I'm Leah Smart, and this is Everyday Better, a personal development podcast where every week I sit down with some of the world's brightest minds and bravest hearts who use science and story to share strategies for how we can flourish individually in relationship to others and to the world around us. As regular listeners of the show will know, I recently gave birth to my first child. And as I adjust to life as a new mom, my lovely producers, Grace and Emily, are helping me out. I'm going to let them take over for just a few moments, and then I'll be back with you for the rest of the show.
We're going to try something a little different today. Before we tell you about our guest, we're just going to drop you into the first few minutes of the conversation, and we'll be back in a sec.
Okay, so I watched your TED Talk, and I heard you start the TED Talk with this very specific and blatant, just I'm Jodi, and here's how many Mondays I have left. So I want to know, I don't think you do this at parties. Maybe you do, but I'm curious, how do people deal with that when you say it?
Right. Because there's always this fine line of how do I not totally turn people off? My goal is to draw people into the conversation about mortality as a motivator, not be weirdly offensive or overly morbid. So yeah, I do use the Monday thing a lot. And I talk to people about how, I like to, bring the Grim Reaper into the conversation and talk about how finite we are and how that's actually kind of an important thing to use to our advantage. Yeah, it's a crappy fact that we're finite, but it is the very thing we need, needing a deadline like most of us do in order to get on with the business of living. And I try to not, totally offend people in the meantime while they're getting to know me.
I love it. Okay, wait. So how many Mondays do you have left? And I'm pulling out my calculator to also do my Mondays left, because we are counting as if we would live potentially to 85, right?
Well, for women, it would be 83.
Oh, 83, sorry.
Yeah, 83 minus your age.
Devastating.
And then multiply by 52 of those weeks. So I've got 1,810 left as of this week. Can I be nosy?
Yeah.
What's going on over there?
2,444 as of this week.
You have more than half.
That's Jodi Wellman, and she's here to remind you that you are going to die. Now, understandably, you probably don't want to think about this unfortunate fact right now. In fact, most of us do a whole lot of mental gymnastics to avoid ever thinking about it. But Jodi believes that becoming more in touch with our mortality is actually the secret to living a joyous life. A life that's full of both vitality and meaning, where you're in touch with what makes you feel most alive.
Jodi is a speaker, executive coach, and the author of You Only Die Once: How to Make It to the End with No Regrets. She's built an entire company and life philosophy around the idea that we all get about 4,000 Mondays in our lives, and it's up to us how we spend them. As a certified coach and an assistant instructor in the Master of Applied Positive Psychology program at the University of Pennsylvania, Jodi has helped leaders, teams, and individuals learn how to live a better life by embracing death. I know this might sound morbid, but I feel confident that this will be the most fun conversation you've ever heard about death. Jodi's here to share what we all need to know about it, the lessons we can learn from near-death experiences, and how to make it to the end without having the wrong kind of regrets.
So, if you're game, pull up your calculator app and figure out how many Mondays you have left. That number might be scary, especially because even those aren't guaranteed. But as Jodi tells us, thinking about death is a gratitude booster. So you might just leave this conversation feeling grateful for all the Mondays you've had and all the ones still to come. Here's Jodi.
We're used to talking a language about years left. So I try to break it down to the ridiculous, and that's why the weeks left can sometimes be a little bit more oomphy around, I hadn't thought of it that way. I know someone else who is breaking it down to the number of hours or days even. So someone I know celebrated its 20,000th day of living.
Wow.
And I thought that was pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
But I don't care how you decide to measure it. I just like the idea of the measurement existing and that we are very conscious that it is a diminishing number, because that is where the juice is. It's that we will go to great lengths to not talk and think about the fact that, we're getting older. We count our age up. We don't love that number, but it's the diminishing thing, which is that notion, as I know you saw in the TEDx talk and stuff, it's the temporal scarcity, which is when we see any kind of resource as rare, we value it more. And we take our lives for granted. Let's just cut to the chase of what I think that many of us do suffer from, is that even if you are conscious of your time, it's like, are you finding yourself in autopilot? Probably a lot, because you're busy and you found routines that'll help you glaze over and function. Are you taking time in life for granted? In ways that we often get those little minor wake-up calls, but I want this to be an intentional poke in the ribs to say, all these things that I keep postponing, that I keep thinking I'll do later, who am I to think that there's even really a later? Later is happening now. Let's make it happen in the moment. It's too risky to put it off for when work dies down. Yeah, right. Keep waiting for that bus. That'll never come.
Right.
Or retirement, whatever that even means anymore. Don't even get me started on retirement. I see. Yeah, we're both shaking our head.
I'm not.
We have no room for that.
Yeah, I don't have space for that. It's an awkward topic, but something that I think at this point, hopefully, if people are still listening, they're like, okay, I'm a little bit intrigued if they're still listening. And they've done, thank you so much. Yes. And they've maybe even taken a second to do their own calculation on how many Mondays they have left. While we're in this conversation about how many Mondays we have left, I want to go to the 6 things that you say are worth knowing about death. What are those 6 things that we need to know?
Well, one of them is that we do not want to talk about it. So I like to acknowledge that the denial is that proverbial default setting, right? It is supremely dispiriting, this idea that we're not going to be around for long or forever. So we would just rather not talk about it. We could talk about anything else. We could have another glass of wine, please and thanks. Let's just not, why would we do that? So acknowledging, and a lot of philosophers, existential psychologists have been pretty darn clear to point out that denial exacts a price. So by not being willing to go there and talk about it, think about it, get to the end of this podcast, talking about it and thinking about it, that it usually manifests in ways that we don't like for our lives. So it does often contribute to death anxiety. And it doesn't mean that we need to be overly morbid about it either, right? We could just open up a conversation with our family and friends about this idea of, hey, I just did this weird calculation today. How many Mondays do you have left? And then, or start talking about things that the softest entrance into this is the proverbial bucket list, right? So that's just, let's flip the script fast from talking about death and move it into the conversation, quite frankly, about living, because that's the spirit of all this, in case it wasn't super obvious, is that we're talking about the fact that we are temporary so that we can live with more vitality and meaning, ideally, while we're here. So that's one of the main things we know to be true about death. Let's see, what are a couple of other ones?
We will all die was one that really got me. It sounds so silly, right? But I was the first one that I really was like, oh my God. Yeah. It's like, oh, we will all die. And then even just the fact that you said in here, 13% of us will die between 15 and 49, which is devastating and feels so sad. And then 26% of us will be between 50 and 69. So hence the conversation about not waiting for retirement to start your life.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's no spoiler alert required to say that we're all going to die, but sometimes that slap is necessary. So memento mori is the Latin phrase that is about remembering we must die. And it's like, we know in life, you don't just program your code and say, now I will no longer take life for granted. We need consistent reminders because we're adapting all the time to the life around us. So we need, quite frankly, I guess we just need to read this book every year. I mean, that's really where we're going. But we need like the very constant reminders. Like you can't see where I am, but I mean, I obviously am the extreme, but I've got like the skulls and the hourglasses and all of the paraphernalia you can imagine. So that every time I turn, I have my ring everywhere I go. There's I even got the tattoo this year. Like there's just no denying it. Like, unfortunately, we need that. Because we will glaze over. We're built to. Otherwise, we'd go crazy with everything in life. We have to glaze over a little bit. So I'm a fan of that. Another fact, now that I'm on a roll here and you just can't stop me, people who have had brushes with death, their eyes have been opened in ways that I am so freaking envious of. Because they see what matters in life. And maybe even more importantly, dare I say, they see what doesn't matter anymore. So they tend to abandon the things like they're not sweating the small stuff as much. Typically, they are not caring as much about what people think about them. They've got way better boundaries. They have a better sense of like, yeah, I almost died. Like your stupid committee doesn't matter to me anymore. Although they might say it nicer than that, or maybe not. I don't know. I tell the story sometimes about this woman that I met here in Palm Springs. She runs a nonprofit called Shay's Warriors for cancer survivors of breast cancer. And she said in her 22 weeks of going through chemotherapy, she brought a fresh journal into the treatment room with her. And we all love a fresh journal, right? It's like you crack it open, you're like, there's so much potential, like hope. It just represents hope. Yeah.
Yes.
So she cracks open her journal and she drew a circle in the middle of one of the pages. And she said, I purposely wrote coming out of this, because I know I'm going to get a second chance at life. And those words just grab me, right? A second chance. She wrote in the circle and the things that she wanted to keep in her life post-treatment. She also wrote things that were going to be outside of the circle when she was done her treatment. And that included some of the tasks and the people that she no longer wanted to really spend her time with, because she was like, why would I waste my time? You know, because sometimes some people in your life, they're a casual acquaintance and you meet up with them every quarter because that's what you do, but they're kind of de-energizing. Bye-bye. Outside the circle. Same thing with some of her mindsets. She abandoned her pleasing mindset. And here I am sitting there so impressed and proud and inspired and like, I don't want to go through chemo to have to draw my freaking circle, right? I want all of us to feel inspired to say, well, what kind of life do I want to be living if I had a second chance?
Yeah, what if today was my second chance versus like a thing? But like you said, so many of us take it for granted. How did you get to this point of like having this really positive, kind of unique view on death? Like, I'm so curious about your own life experiences.
Yeah. What happened to you?
Not like that, like, who hurt you?
No. Well, I've always had a really healthy fascination and appreciation for the fact that we're all totally going to end. But my mom died when she was 58. And the usual story people would think from that would be, oh, it's a grief story. And there's grief. Sure, I certainly miss her and love her. But the thing that was very powerful for me was that I got to see firsthand, cleaning up her apartment after she died, how many dreams she had and how she died with almost all of them inside of her. She had all these plans and she designed her own business cards and she'd have manuscripts. She was writing books, kids' books, short stories, drawing, and didn't have the confidence to send them out or to execute or to give it more than one go. And so every drawer, I'm serious, it was just this profound moment of seeing what I call the land of dormant intentions. And to be honest, like everything in life, the things that grip you often are the things that you see in yourself. And so I recognized that the apple didn't fall far from the tree and that maybe for me, I would have, let's just say proclivities to dream and then also lack confidence. And I thought, holy God, like life is short. it's maybe shorter than I have budgeted. And I got to get on with this. I can't keep, in the time I was, in a good corporate job, but I had been dreaming about bigger, broader things. And I was like, honey, what are you waiting for? Like, if you were to go early, would you not regret giving your own stuff a go? And the answer, of course, was yes. And so that lit a fire in me.
Wow.
Yeah.
I like have the visual of opening drawers and discovering things about someone that you feel like you know so much about. But like I felt when you described that story, the grief of unrealized or even just unapproached dreams. I was like, oh, that makes me grieve more. That's like, that is like, ooh.
Thank you for that. I just got shivers. And I think you're right. It's like we're grieving the potential of what could have been. And, here's where I guess I feel feelings about, it's not that I think she coulda, shoulda submitted the manuscript and been a published author 7 times over, because it wasn't so much about the success that I would have cared about, or that she launched and really gave her, hiking stick carving business a real go and made it to, I don't know, like hiking stick stardom. It's not that it was about the fame and the glory and the riches. It was more about what I know it could have done for her, which was like every time you give it the try and you are willing to face possible rejection and do it again, and then get yourself up off the ground and maybe like brush off your knees and maybe put a Band-Aid on them and then go like, okay, I'm going to send it out again. Like that act of trying, I think, is where life is often lived.
Yeah. Yeah. And like on the, maybe not the negative side, but it's like that act of not trying is kind of where you see people die a little bit or lose some of that like lightness, some of the like aliveness that they have when they come up with an idea, or just want to do something. And I also want to call out, it's like, it's to your point that it wasn't necessarily about the success, because I think oftentimes, especially as Americans, we in our mind believe, and if you've ever watched Shark Tank, which I do way too many times throughout the week, you in your mind believe you're supposed to start a thing and it's supposed to get big and it's supposed to do this and then this and then this, and your happiness will be forevermore because of because you've got to deal with Mark Cuban, or because, everything took off. And it's like, no. And not everyone has those exact dreams. Not everyone has that thing, right? Yes. So I also wonder, like, when you think about our recipe, each of our recipes for living the way that we're supposed to live, how do you kind of right-size it for people to stop also feeling so like artificially drawn to a dream that maybe isn't theirs?
Yeah. For many of us, research will show that when we really stop and do the contemplation and take it seriously and accept the fact that, of course, we're going to die, but use it to our advantage in this memento mori we've been talking about, sort of being real with it and using it to kind of tweak what matters to us. The evidence is clear that we tend to value goals that are more intrinsic rather than extrinsic. So left to our own devices, we're going to watch social media and be like, okay, I guess I need to try and strive for that kind of car, or I should vacation in this kind of place, or, we know how this goes. And we dupe ourselves into also believing that that's like, I worked corporately for, like I said, those 17 years. And for me, it was like trappings of success were just delicious, and then too overfilling, and then grotesque. And it was like, I don't know what to do. When am I going to be happy? It's like my business card is defining me right now. And I think many of us have that niggling sense when that is the case. And so, well, here's one remedy, it is to stop and recognize, oh, honey, yeah, you're totally going to die. And hopefully it's in a long ways away, but it might be sooner. And let's get back in touch with that, because does that help change some of your goals? Does it help change the way in which you want to approach life? Let's look at the research of people who've had near-death experiences. I write about a gentleman in one of the corporate workshops I did where he almost died in a motorcycle accident. And he said to his group, it came up somehow about how, guys, like, you see now that I used to be plugged in at night and on the weekends, and I was always responding to emails. And he's like, I'm not playing that game anymore. And I don't mean to disparage you all, but because I played that game for my whole career. I've seen the other side, and it's just, I'm not going to be responding first at 9:09 p.m. tonight to the first question that doesn't matter to me anymore. And so I do think that, the scales fall from your eyes. Now, again, don't go contrive an almost motorcycle accident to get that benefit. But I think learning from other people's stories and getting that perspective can be helpful. Every opportunity that we think about death is an affirmation of the life we get to live. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't think we can afford not to. And of course, I'm biased, but let's even increase the time we'll spend thinking about this by even if it's even 10%, because that might make us decide to say, wow, how can I be more intentional about my time? How can I approach it with a little more urgency and not a panicked urgency, not a, I am now stressed because I can't fit it all in kind of urgency, but in actually a very deliberate, judicious, this time is ticking. And so of the 17 things that I have been thinking about, mulling about, talking about, but not acting on, what would actually be the 3 things that would make me feel so proud of myself if, I did kick the bucket maybe at the end of the month?
What are some of the other things that you've seen in the research, qualitative and quantitative, that emerge in how we live post near-death experiences?
Yeah. We talked about refining priorities. So that's one of the main ones, right? So it's that I acknowledge now that the goals I set for myself that I have been putting on ice, it's time to thaw those puppies. It's that there's a recalibration of the intentions. And there can tend to be this thing of like, I'm taking my goals and my bucket list and my intentions seriously now. And so I am booking the trip to Antarctica, for example, or I am going to go ahead and start that Etsy business that I've been putting off for so long. So there's this real sense of gravitas about like, I'm going to go on, I'm taking my goals seriously. The abandonment of the small stuff, I think, is also crucial. So some of us let that cloud our lives, right? So it's getting caught up in maybe the voice of that saboteur that is talking us down and making us feel small or judging why we will do or not do something. And it's that, no, I'm going to do it anyways. There is evidence, of course, about the ratcheted up appreciation for life, like just a general sense of gratitude for everything in life, even the things that don't relate to life, like the sanctity of life. It's like a greater sense of appreciation for other people, for advancements in humanity. I tell a story of a guy I know, Chris, who had multiple brain surgeries to remove cancer. And he was only in his 30s at the time. And he says there's this moment he calls a helicopter moment where he was sitting outside the hospital system at Penn in Philadelphia and was on a bench after he got his last diagnosis that his brain was clear, like no more cancer. And he sat there and he said, I looked up at the sky in a way I'd never had before. And I was awestruck by the helicopters that I saw in the sky, this whole network of them coming in and out of the hospital, helping save people's lives. And he's like, I felt such profound gratitude that humans, we even could build these machines. Like he was going meta. It wasn't even just about the fact that lives are being saved because of the transport. It was like, we get to do these things. And so that'll also take me to a heightened sense of wonder and awe, that appreciation about the sanctity of life that, in the grand scheme of things, we're just so fabulously small in a way that can help size our issues.
When I'm thinking about near-death experiences, my question was like, can we, and I think this is the goal of your work, can we learn some of the lessons that people tend to learn from near-death experiences without actually having them?
For some of us, there's a wake-up call that can be different. There's this thing called boundary situations in psychology that it's often like a rite of passage in life. So it could be when you have a baby or when you get married. It could be for some of us, it's like getting a job or losing a job or retiring. Some kind of pivotal moment that for whatever reason matters to you as a representation of a new stage in life and a passing of time that can represent this sort of the time is ticking onwards, and so sometimes that can be powerful, or it's, let's be honest, it's a birthday with a 0. Those are the more common ways of going, what? And I say, seize them. Every single person, I believe it's like required, human training to regularly do that deathbed regret exercise. And imagine yourself, and I've done this before at a retreat where we actually get in coffins. And that is not for the faint of heart, but very profound. And it's full of a visualization of imagining, that this is it. And imagine you getting to the end tonight and thinking, even if it's something that's small, and I don't want to judge anybody's dreams. So most of my dreams are silly. It doesn't matter. It could be like, I never learned how to speak Italian. I always wanted to, or I never wrote the poetry book. Man, I wished I had. Or it could also be ways of being. I wished I had spent more time with my kids and not on my phone.
Slowed down or
Slowed down. Right. Or how about this one? I wish I'd taken all of my vacation days. I don't even care if you go away, right? Or I wished I had been bolder. This would be mine right now, which I will actively change as a result of now feeling strangely accountable to you and telling you this. But like,
Perfect.
I wished I had made, I wish I didn't care about, like what other people would think or knocking on the door of someone that intimidated me. I wish I was just bolder and did it anyways. Cause what do you have to lose? We're all freaking dying.
Yeah.
So, like that could be a way of it. So noticing what would you regret? And then I call them pre-grets. And I know it's super corny, the wording, but it's like, these are regrets in advance. They're not regrets yet because you haven't died yet. So what about doing like a little thing today that'll help you prevent that regret in the making? You can course correct it. There's still time. Even if it's just a little bit of time, there's still time. You could book that trip. You could start to crack open that journal and start writing your poetry book. You could register, apply for that program at school that you've been wondering about. You could, so much potential, right? Back to the journal that's like so much is available to us.
After the break, is it possible to live without regrets? Jodi gives us her advice for how to get out of autopilot and get serious about our dreams without having to have a near-death experience. We'll be right back. And we're back with Jodi Wellman.
I love the term regrets because my big question for you was like, do you actually believe that regrets are not something we want to have? Because we will have them, right? And we kind of need them in order to chart a new course, and we need to not avoid them or, to go, oh God, I regret that. So I'm not going to think about it. I'm going to pretend it never happened. It's like, no, that's material. So like, I'm so curious, what's your take on them? And what are you hoping people walk away with around regrets?
I love your questions. We're so lockstep on this. And I should have an asterisk on the book beside the subtitle about how to make it to the end with no regrets. It's like regrets of a certain kind.
Right.
Because, right. I mean, some regrets. So there's this thing, I'll never forget the phrase, decision hygiene. It's so corporate-y, researchy weird, but it's like regrets are helpful. So if you do something like, man, I regret marrying that guy in Vegas I met the night before. Okay. With benefit of hindsight, you might have done it differently. And that might be that might be the thing you go, wow, now I know, less mezcal for me. That could be your lesson learned. I don't know. This is a very interesting example I'm giving you. It's not personal. But we do typically improve our lives and our performance as a result of learning from lessons. Love it. And the way I'd love to just encourage us to think about this is, I don't want us to get caught up in thinking about regrets, about the things that we did and just wish we hadn't, because those are called regrets of commission. And research is clear that over time, we tend to forgive ourselves for the dumb things. So let's just let it go.
Yeah.
Most of us will feel plagued to some extent by the regrets of omission, which are those paths we didn't take. And those are the only ones, to be super duper honest, I'm concerned about. It's that if you have a dream that matters to you, if you have an inkling, if you have something on your bucket list that you keep bumping up to the top echelon of that list and you're not doing it because you are giving yourself the excuse that you are busy, and you might be, or you can't afford it. And that might be true right now, but that we're deferring it. Those are the things that I need us to be highly suspicious of ourselves for, because those are usually about we're punting life. And that's the thing where I'm just so concerned. Well, what about now? What could we do that helps to bring those little things alive now? Yeah. Live a life that is checkered with fabulous failure. Cause that to me is emblematic of, I gave a crap. I tried. You win some, you lose some. That deserves a medal on your urn at the end, I think. But did you not try? The things you didn't try are the things that are going to have a very distinct smell and flavor and feeling to on your deathbed. And we do not want any of that for any of us, do we?
No. And to your point, the bucket list, it's not about checking off every single item necessarily in the bucket list. It's which things on the bucket list keep like eking their way to the top of it and making you go, God, I have to do that thing. And the one thing that you're like, I don't know if I can really do that and I don't want to do it. It's like, don't fill your life, well, I don't want to say don't, but you may not escape those regrets of omission if you fill your life with middling priorities from your bucket list so that you feel like, oh, I checked some stuff off,
Oh, that is I've never even thought of that. That is such a good point, because we can dupe ourselves with, mid-range bucket list items that do tend to, you know what? It's going to be great. Like, yay,
it's great. Yeah.
We went to Vienna. We did the thing.
Right.
But am I writing the book? Like, and we know if we're honest with ourselves, which we're usually not that honest.
Not, right?
like, good for you. You're participating in your life. And that does deserve awesome high fives about like living it. Again, and back to your version of however much you want to travel and try the new tasting menus or go to do the things you want to do and do the hobbies you want to do. But you're right. Be very honest with yourself about the stuff that you are putting off, because you may run out of time while you fill your schedule with other fabulous but maybe less prioritized things.
Well, so personally, what I notice, and even just in your example, right? Like you said, we went to Vienna. That's a very different experience than, but are you writing the book? Those things actually feel like, or for me, what I've experienced is a lot of times the kind of middling priorities that I can check off the list and do, while they're fun, they feel extrinsic. And then there's like sort of this inner life or inner world of like, ooh, but there's this stuff that like feels deep and feels like I have to dig for it. And I have to do something that feels really not safe, really risky in the sense of like not physical risk or danger, but it feels like it puts me at risk. And those are the things that I would put at the top of my list. And then there are all the other things I can just go, oh yeah, I can totally book that trip, or I can do that. That stuff almost feels like wafy or thin.
Yes, you are just depicting this is so perfect, because in the way I think about life is the framework of living wider with vitality.
That's where I was heading.
And look at you setting the stage.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Wider with vitality, which can be fun and frothy and fizzy. And that can be like, that is pure pleasure. It's the cool stuff. It's like, yay, we went to the fair, or yay, we did the Prague thing, or the typical, it's what we associate with like good old fashioned happiness. It's
and
pleasure.
Fun.
It's great. Fun. Thank you. And it is so necessary. And some of us need it more than others, but that's the dimension of living wider. Okay, cool. And then there's the dimension of living deeper, which tracks to having more of a sense of meaning or purpose. And for many of us, it also could include like a connection to other people. Maybe there's something spiritual there if that matters to you. And there's a need for both in our lives. That's, by the way, the eudaimonic dimension of well-being for those, and that contrasts to hedonic, which is the widening, the fun. And we need both for a life well lived. And again, your results may vary. Your recipe, as you're referring to, I like a lot. It is different from your neighbors, and that's okay. The question I ask, and like you're saying, some of the items on a bucket list might be purely fun, right? But the deeper goals that you're talking about, the actual dreams we have for ourselves, these other intentions, they sometimes exist in like the 3D version of that model of like wider is your x-axis, deeper is your y. And it's kind of like they could float anywhere in this 3D model of a different dimension of, it might provide a little bit of fun for you. It might not. Writing the book might detract your fun for a while, but it's going to create a sense of poignancy and meaning that you've put effort into it. And some parts of it might be downright fun. But I think that calling out and noticing, to your point, a bucket list might be different from a list of dreams and goals and ambitions, which might also be different from a list of things that just make me happy that I should fill my day up with every now and then, just because a life really is just 5-minute increments stitched together. And I think, it would be weird if we had a timer on our watch where every 14 minutes it was stop and savor it. Cause like, whoa, just like, let me chill a sec. Like, let me live my life.
Relax.
But we are taking for granted even those little steps along the way to what we think are the big moments. Like, how they always say life is what happens when you're busy making plans, or like we're living for the weekend or the vacation, but it's the steps getting there that's where life is. It's the laugh on the drive on the way to the grocery store. It's the chat with the Uber driver that is interesting. It's like sometimes just doing that reminder and placing yourself in that moment is key. And these are the things we can train ourselves to do, is just to have these little moments, these little sparks where you would say, wow, you know what, eating this popsicle as it's melting on our hands, standing outside, waiting to get into the movie theater, which is where we thought the event of the day was. No, this popsicle melting moment, this is where life is being lived. You know, it's all being lived, presumably, until it's not being lived anymore, but like savoring those, even the most mundane things.
I want to know how, you have this beautiful chart that shows the difference between, or the relationship between like the width versus depth. There's an interesting section here called being meaningfully bored, which I was surprised by because the others made sense. You have sections called astonishingly alive, like that's where we all want to be. You have, vitality empty. You have the dead zone. Can you talk about meaningfully bored?
Yeah, meaningfully bored is the one where most people find themselves. So in my research, it's anywhere between 39 and 41% of people kind of consistently will end up there. And this is where the meaning is okay. People self-identify as like, yeah, I've got enough meaning in my life. So maybe they have a job that they feel like is purposeful, or maybe they're rearing kids. I've heard that's meaningful, or they're doing something in their life that feels like meaning is above average. But they are not above the zero line on vitality, on the width part. And so this is where they are lacking in that sense of joie de vivre, that vitality, that sense of fun, and this often looks like the all work, no play conundrum that many of us find ourselves in, which is, yeah, work's good. I'm getting good stuff done. I'm feeling proud of the work I'm doing, whatever, impact, blah, blah, blah. But I'm really bored. Like I lost the plot of going out and like, I used to have hobbies. What happened to them? Oh, I know. I gave them up because it was busy at work. And I said I'd come back. Or, wow, we fell off the wagon in COVID of doing that like monthly brunch club that we used to do. And like, we just never got back on it because, she moved away. But, why don't we do that again? And so sometimes we find ourselves okay on meaning, but lacking on that fun. And then the flip, of course, the vitally empty would be like, oh my gosh, it's so much fun, but I am an empty human inside. There's no meaning.
Okay, so what exercises do you have that you recommend for people to go, I'm meaningfully bored right now and I want to move to astonishingly alive. What do I do?
Ooh, yeah, this one to me is easier than we often think. Because we often, it's like all or nothing thinking. And you're like, I'm really busy with work. Yeah, you probably always will be. So let's work around that, right? I like the idea of brushing the dust off of a thing you used to do that used to bring you joy and make you feel like you were alive. So many of us think we have to go and invent a new activity or hobby, and you could do that. I mean, by all means, if you're so curious about going and trying glass blowing or going and doing that woodworking thing, like, well, go do it. That could be really cool if you are truly curious and excited. But if you're kind of at a loss and you're not sure, what used to make you feel really energized and alive and kind of plugged into life? We just have to get creative, right? It's like, okay, you were thinking about going and taking that ukulele class. There you go. All you got to do is register. Boom. Now, next Thursday evening, you're on. And now all of a sudden your vitality has just jumped about 18 points, So just go with what used to work, or follow curiosity if there is something interesting to you, or emulate a vitality role model in your life. If you know of a friend or a sibling or someone who's just living life and you're like, she's always seeming like she's excited by life in a way that she's got zest and I don't. What does she do? Just unpack her life for some cues and clues. And maybe there's something there that actually will be interesting for you too.
And in your work and in your research, what do you have to say about work as it relates to all of this conversation about life and death? What do you have to tell everybody?
Work, it'll kill you. No, I just. Work, well, we all know it is profoundly important for many of us to find a source of both meaning and vitality. However, I think we need to reframe the role work plays in our lives. I think we need to get a job that is good for us. And I think that if our job is demoralizing or sucking our soul out of ourselves, we do need to move on from that. However, I think we need to let it off the hook a little bit, because I think that many of us are putting a whole lot of an expectation that work is going to be our sole source of meaning in life. And it also somehow has to add excitement and vitality to our lives. And inherently, it can't do all of it for us. And so again, I will never advocate for staying in a job that is zapping you of aliveness. That's just a recipe for an early death, and that's not interesting to any of us. But what about getting a life outside of your work? And I don't mean that in a crass way, like the get a life, we used to say when we were kids. I don't mean it like that. But I mean it as some of us have fallen off the wagon of participating in life outside work. And if we just try and find the smallest of ways to do what we've been discussing, rekindle the hobby, learn something new, engage in something else that makes us feel more alive, it changes our relationship with work when we go back in the next morning, because now all of a sudden we don't need that work to be the be all and end all source of aliveness for us. It's in context of a greater whole where we're doing other things too. So that's my latest thinking, which might be controversial to some, but I think we need to recalibrate the relationship workplace in our lives.
It's kind of like, I remember a quote, or, not a quote, direct quote, but something that Jim Carrey said was like, I wish everyone could have all the success and all the money and all the things that they put on their bucket list so that they could understand how little those things really do for you. And so, they're absolutely, to your point, I agree, there's a balance and there is value in finding work that really you can have some sense of meaning in, that you can find some sense of joy in and energy in. And we put a lot on work, and we've got to stop doing that. So I really appreciate your perspective.
Amen.
Yeah. I feel like you've so beautifully put how we live in a way that honors the really simple stuff, the mundane stuff, and the things that we tend to ignore. Who do we become when we do this?
There's this phrase that I just am so attracted to. It's this notion of like, I'm the kind of person who. And we sometimes lose touch with that we are the kind of person who does savor things, or I'm the kind of person who does make time for myself and does block off 40 minutes so I can go and do that archery lesson. We train ourselves into showing ourselves every time we make a choice to live and choose aliveness, even as tiny as it is. It's that I'm the kind of person who gives it SHIT about my life. Too, in fact, I care. And I'm the kind of person who is preventing regrets in the making, because I'm showing up, I'm engaging, I am showing myself and maybe other people in my life who might care. Oh, like if I happen to have a kid, or if I happen to have a team at work, or if I just happen to have a friend who sees me as maybe a role model of vitality of somebody, because we all have people like that in our lives, right? It's like, man, you're always taking a new class, or wow, you're always starting a new hobby, or wow, you're always going on those silent retreats. What's that like? And we have the opportunity, and not that you need to live for anybody else. That's the wrong message here, but I'm the kind of person who lives before she dies.
How many Mondays do you have left?
1,810.
Well, I am hoping and wishing and sending you all the vibes that all of your 1,810 Mondays are lived beautifully, and that you make a life that you can look back on and say that it was worth living and that you owned. So I have so appreciated talking to you, Jodi, and also just sitting here in this not easy conversation about something that most of us avoid. So also thank you for doing the work that you're doing, because it matters. It matters.
Well, thank you. I'm obsessed with time, and spending this hour-ish time with you is really profound time well spent. Thank you.
That was Jodi Wellman, the author of You Only Die Once: How to Make It to the End with No Regrets. Everyday Better is a production of LinkedIn News. The show is hosted by Leah Smart and produced by me, Emily Reeves.
And me, Grace Rubin.
Asaf Gadron is our sound engineer. Tim Boland mixes our show. We get additional support from Alex Kuznetsova and Allie McPherson. Sarah Storm is our senior producer. Dave Pond is head of production and creative operations. Maya Pope-Chappelle is director of content and audience development. Courtney Koop is head of original programming. And Dan Roth is the editor-in-chief of LinkedIn. Thanks for coming with us, and we'll see you next week.